I am often asked, what is your practice? And this is often coming from other people who are interested in Zen Buddhism, or maybe have gone to a Zen center, and they come across me and they see that I'm different, that I'm not advocating the same thing that all the other Zen centers are, which is to go sit on a black cushion and face the wall in what they call practice, that being a process called Zazen. And that's a fancy Japanese word for meditation, but not necessarily any old meditation, more of the meditation that Eihei Dogen, a 12th century Tendai monk, came up with, and that was later on called a new religion by the Japanese academics. So, what is my practice? People will say, well, you're Zen, so how do you practice Zen? What is this Zen? And the answer I can give them is that you don't practice Zen. Zen is not something that you go get. Zen is not something that you do. Zen is something that already exists. It is just that when you flow into Zen, you're flowing into the intuitive nature of Buddha nature. It's an intuitiveness of knowing. And people will be like, well, what do you mean? And I would say, well, it's very much like how a sports player knows just when to jump and throw the ball so that it goes precisely in the hoop of the basketball hoop and makes that swoosh sound without hitting the rim, the backboard, or anything. And they're like, yeah, that is an intuitive knowing. It's just like the golfer who can intuitively know how to hit that ball just so that it comes within feet of the pin, the little hole that they put it in. And it's just like the competition riflemen who can quickly point that rifle at the target and hit the bullseye every time. Or the archer who can, on a moment's notice, draw the bow, place the arrow, and hit the mark every time. So, when you think about, well, wait a minute, I'm thinking, don't they have to think like, okay, I take the arrow out and I notch it and I draw the string back. Now I gotta focus and find things, and I gotta remember all my postures, and then I gotta let go of the bow, and usually they miss it by a mile. So this is known as conceptualization, when you have to conceptualize every little step, every little means and ways, every little detail. And when you have to do that, you're almost like, it just doesn't work because there's no flow to it. There's no rhythm. There's no spiritual nature to the thing that you're doing. You can also see an aspect of Zen sometimes in art, where a person somehow captures something in such a way to make it extremely unique and beautiful, whereas the same thing captured by somebody else who maybe isn't flowing with the Buddha nature, what they do is lacking. You can see that sometimes in paintings and ink calligraphy. You can see that in photography sometimes, or even in a film. There have been certain moments in a film where I felt that the filmmakers, or at least the cinematographers, were flowing with it. And they caught the moment. And a lot of times the artist can feel it. They feel when they're in the flow. Sometimes the martial artist can feel that. They can feel when they're in the flow. And they know exactly when to do those moves. They're not thinking, oh, I'm going to do a block, I'm going to do a kick, I'm going to do another block, and here comes a punch. No. They're flowing with their spirit, and their spirit is tapped deep into the Buddha nature. Now, this is Zen. This is not necessarily this is not necessarily a what the Buddha taught, but it is an aspect of Buddhism, because there's a lot of Buddhism in where to achieve the practice that we want, we have to flow with the Buddha nature. We have to be able to let go of our conceptual thinking, our conceptual self, and move within the flow of the universe, so to speak. Now, I know this pretty much sounds pretty artsy and kind of spiritual talk, and you might have heard of this before. And a lot of people struggle. They struggle greatly with this, even feeling the flow. Sometimes just maybe, doing something like Tai Chi, just something simple. And you're doing it in such a way, and you're doing it where you're not thinking about doing it, but it's being done anyway. And for a moment, even for a tenth of a second, you fall into the flow of Buddha nature. You fall into the flow. And suddenly your mind taps into something very vast and very deep that has always been there and will always be there. It was here before you were here, and it'll be here well after you are gone. And this is that touch. You're touching immortality. And this is the secret, the true Dharma eye opening. The storehouse treasury is when you're touching that immortal part of yourself, the part that already knows, the part that can do the most incredible and amazing things when you step out of the way of it. And it happens. It can happen in science, it can happen in art, it can happen in music, it can happen in so many different places. It'll shock you. Now, in our practice of Buddhism, we as Zen students are from the school of the Mahayana, the greater vehicle. And if I say the greater vehicle, then I am, of course, alluding to a lesser vehicle, which would be the Hinayana. And a lot of times people will say, so if Zen and Tibetan Buddhism is Mahayana, and then so what is Hinayana? And that would be more of your Theravada. And Theravada, it is more of the merit towards a better rebirth, merit towards future life, but also the fact of merit towards enlightenment in this life, in where the ultimate goal of the Theravada is to become the Arhat, the non-returner, those who will not come back to this existence. Now, in the Theravada schools, they will say that your soul, your essence, is habituated to this human arising, is habituated to all the things that this funhouse called the human body is. And by cutting off the means of being habituated, you're cutting off all the creature comforts, you're cutting off all the desires, lust, and wants, you're cutting off everything that this funhouse can be. The mind starts to decouple. The mind starts to withdraw. You no longer are addicted to it. And that very same concept also shows up in the Mahayana, as in how to release, how to detach, how to separate yourself from this funhouse, how to end the cycle of rebirth. But the Mahayana goes a bit further. We go into the Bodhisattva Precepts. And these Bodhisattva Precepts are amazing. And through the magic of video editing, you'll see some papers have appeared next to me. So, the Bodhisattva is an amazing path because it doesn't say that I will not come back. This is basically saying, I am going to help everybody not come back, all sentient beings in all worlds, in all dimensions, in all planes of existence. So in Zen, we take what's known as the Four Great Vows, and this is more or less coming out of the Mahayana Sutras. You know, the first great vow of the Bodhisattva is the vow to liberate all beings. Now, sometimes this is known as the vow to save all beings. This vow is really important because the vow to save all beings, all sentient beings. This doesn't mean that I'm going to go out there and try to save them from phenomenal happenings, from the phenomenal suffering of this world, because that would be insane. That would be not only impossible, but it's insane. I can't save all sentient beings like that. That is not what we are talking about here. We are talking about saving all sentient beings in a spiritual context. And by saving them, it means to bring them the Dharma, bring them the Buddha, Sangha, and Dharma, bring them the truth, to help them liberate themselves from the continual cycle of suffering, samsara as they would call it, that we are on. The next one is that to vow to extinguish all defilements, or the inexhaustible defilements. And sometimes the defilements can be your sins. These would be things like lust and rage and passions and hatred and anger and joy. Like I said, everything that this funhouse can experience, can engage in and do. We vow to drop it. We vow to abandon it. We vow to relinquish it. And that is a biggest part of our practice, is to relinquish all of this stuff. To relinquish my hate, relinquish my anger, relinquish my lust, my jealousies. Now, it would also mean to also relinquish the extremes of these things. Because sometimes there's, remember, the middle way. So, between, hate and the fetish, the opposite side, which would be the not necessarily love, but more of a fetish attachment to something, there's the middle way, in which maybe we're more neutral about things. We're neutral about lust. We're neutral about anger. We're neutral about greed. We're not in the extremes, because you have a human body. This human body is in this condition. These are part of being in this funhouse. But yet, if you can take the middle way of all these things, suddenly you are engaged in Buddhist practice. You could also further renounce these things, which is, I observe that I have lust, but I abandon the thought of actually getting into it. I see something that I want. I see something that I would like to covet. I see something that I would like to be a part of. But I'm taking the middle position, the middle path, and I'm not going to engage in it. It's there, I recognize it, I say, yep, there it is, and I choose to not actualize it. I choose not to be repulsed. Oh, get that away from me, yucky, yucky, yucky. Or to, bring that to me, I want more. I choose to take the middle position, the middle path. So that's practice. That is my Buddhist practice. I would say that that is your practice. Maybe you should think about this. So this is the opportunity. Every innumerable thing that arises to you, as in attachments or aversions, is your opportunity. The next vow is the mastering of the immeasurable Dharma gates, which is the opportunity to receive wisdom, the opportunity to see the truth in all things, the illusionary nature of it. And thus, when something arises, something that you want to drop away, something that brings itself to you, it becomes the Dharma gate for you to apply Dharma to it, for you to take the middle path, to take the middle way, and to be neutral about it, and then to use it as a Dharma gate, to see the truth of it, the illusionary nature, and to understand it deeply and innately for yourself. And lastly, we make the vow, the vow to actuate the supreme way of the Buddha's path. And the supreme way is always back to the relinquishment and the abandonment of all these things which create the arisings of suffering within ourselves and others. Now, the great Bodhisattva path becomes very unique in the Mahayana in that we are not only here to just save ourselves. I mean, we can become the Prateka Buddha, the solitary Buddha, which that can happen. We can become the Arhat, where I'm not coming back, but that's not your problem, and you're not my problem. Or we can become the Bodhisattva, in which I'm taking all of you with me, and we are all not going to come back. We are all going to be emancipated from this continual rising of samsara. And then lastly, there's Buddha, in which it can happen. I won't say it won't, but one can become Buddha, the supreme emanation of the Dharmakaya into this reality. It has happened before. It can happen again. So this is the practice of Zen. This is the practice of Zen Buddhism. Now you could, like I said, people say, well, I just want the Zen. I don't really think I want this religiosity stuff. That's fine. I then would recommend go take Tai Chi, go learn to do, go take art classes, learn how to paint, become a photographer, do something artistic, do something where your mind and your body and the hands are creating and doing something where it's of yourself and your mind directly. Go carve wood, do something. And then you will feel the true Buddha nature flowing through you when your mind drops away and things just move in its own ways. Now, within the old Zen masters, there is this Zen within dialogue, in where the Zen master just knew what to say at the right time to the right person at the right place, because they were in tune with the Buddha nature within them, because it's all within all of us. Any sentient being can access the Buddha nature. Living animals have the Buddha nature, but they are unaware of it and they are unable to access it. So now, that's Zen. And Zen can certainly be distinctly apart from Buddhism. However, to learn Zen, to understand how to access the Zen flow within yourself, can greatly accelerate your Bodhisattva practice. It can greatly move you along the way. in such progression that you would never otherwise achieve. So a lot of people, say, well, what do you mean by a bodhisattva? So these are my bodhisattva vows. When you take vows of a bodhisattva in a sangha, they give you a piece of paper usually. I have another set of papers here from the Tibetan tradition as well. So the Bodhisattva vows are almost mandatory in Zen for you to take. You really can not take them. So this is very important. And if you take the renunciate vows, which would be called the Samanera vows, that of the renunciate, then you would be considered the Zen monk. So lastly, just a note on sitting meditation. And people say, well, how do you sit meditation? And the answer is, I am sitting now, aren't I? And I am meditatively talking to you. So what about this thing called zazen, this serene illumination? And is it useful? And it's like, well, yes, meditation is useful. A lot of times it is a great way to calm the turbulent seas of the mind. It is a great way to enter into that neutral position, to go into a position of the middle way where you're not abiding in the extremes of anything in particular. It is a great way to center yourself so that when we engage each other as in a sangha to talk about our bodhisattva practice, you will have clarity of mind and a state of mind that is conducive to your own learning and your own progression along the path. Those centers that only sit zazen and do no discussion, they do no revealing of one's soul, one's inner attachments and demons to expose them to the light of the sangha. Those are organizations where there's going to be no progression, no advancement along the path, and no enlightenment. All right, thank you very much for your attention. I know my talks are pretty strong, but I'm trying to change the scene here a little bit to make it a little bit more easy to understand. I know what I say is probably radically different than what your Zen Center teacher is saying. That's because I'm a different person. I'm a different kind of Buddhist. And I think you're going to understand that sometimes what goes on in these Zen centers is neither Zen nor Buddhism. I'm going to let you find out that for yourself and come to your own determination if that's true or not. All right, thank you.